Hi everyone. Thanks for joining today's webinar. I hope everyone is feeling all right. Quite a lot of you joining us from everywhere in the world, so I hope some of you will have their morning coffee. For others at the end of the day. So today we're going to talk about PDF-A, which is the PDF standard for archive documents. Before we get to that, let me introduce myself and my colleague Michael and the company we work for, which is iText. Okay, so my name is Kenneth. I'm the technical product marketing manager at iText. The core part of my job is making sure our developer community has all the tools and content they need. I also accommodate the communication around our product launches and version releases. And I've also been very focused on creating content such as the recently released PDF-A ebook. With me today is Michael. Compared to Michael, I'm very much a newbie. Michael celebrated his 10 years at iText last week, actually. So congratulations, Michael.
Thank you. So thank you, Kenneth. So I'm Michael. I've been here for 10 years now at iText, and my current role is that of the research manager, which means that I lead a small team of engineers that are responsible for innovation and standardization within the company. Innovation means that we write prototypes on a daily basis to advance the technological edge that iText has. And standardization is the process of maintaining and managing the ISO standards, PDF standards, one of which we are discussing today, which is PDF-A. So I'm happy to be here, Kenneth.
So before we get started with the main presentation, let me go over some practical information. Today's webinar will be recorded and it will be available the day after the live webinar. It will be emailed to you. If you have any questions, we love your feedback, so please leave them in the questions tab in the GoToWebinar pane. We'll have a Q&A at the end of the webinar, and if we can get to your question, we'll be glad to answer it by email. And finally, last but not least, please share everything you want to say about this webinar on social, and you can use the hashtag iText there to make Michael and myself very happy. Before we get to the main theme of today, let me introduce iText to you. So iText is best known for its leading open source PDF library, which has been around for over 20 years. It offers all the core functionality one would expect to manipulate and create PDF programmatically. That includes creating PDF-A and PDF-UA compliant documents, digital signing, advanced security and encryption, HTML conversion, and so on. We also have a bunch of closed source add-ons that can do anything from optimizing your PDFs for size and speed to advanced cryptography. Next to that, we have our template-based document generator, which is iText Ditto. iText Ditto is built around a visual designer and makes it really easy for anyone to build documents fast. You can leverage your data as input and output thousands of documents a day. It also lets you manage all your resources like templates, images, and fonts. We have over 125 million users worldwide with about 15,000 downloads a day. We also like to be at the forefront of PDF innovation. We are a board member of the PDF Association, as Michael discussed, and we are part of various ISO committees. Actually, yeah, Michael, who you hear again later today, is one of the people at iText representing us there. We have more than 7,000 customers over basically all industries you could think of. Among them, many big enterprises, representing 70% of Fortune 50 companies. Later on, I'll mention how widespread PDF and PDF-A is, and then I'd like you to think back of this slide as proof of that. And finally, if you want to be part of or contribute to the iText 7 community, you can find all information on our website. And if you are interested, you can also indicate so in the survey at the end of this webinar. So for the main part of this presentation, we'll turn our cameras off so you can focus on the actual presentation. So today, we'll learn why we should use PDF-A. We'll try to understand the inner workings better, and then we'll go over some example use cases and the PDF-A case study with one of our customers, Zeiss. And to spice it up a bit, Michael will show you how you can create PDF-A compliant documents in iText and some additional features as well. And then at the end, of course, we'll have our Q&A to answer all of your questions. I'm sorry, my deck is hanging. Yeah, it's okay. There we go. So why PDF-A? Why PDF-A is the widespread standard for archiving. I'd like to get started by inviting you into the future with me for a second. So imagine it's the year 2500. For a mysterious reason, our civilization as we now know it is long gone. Somehow Harrison Ford managed to survive, and in the ruins of our civilization, he finds a Word document containing all the secrets of this once great civilization. Unfortunately, the docx file is no longer readable in Office 2500, and after a long conversion process from docx to docxyz, what he does manage to see doesn't look anything like the original document. Well, today I want to tell you it could have been a different story had the documents he found been a PDF document. So what makes PDF more suitable for archiving? The first benefit over a lot of other document formats is right there in the name, portable document format. Not in the sense that it's easy to carry around, but in the sense that it can be displayed on a wide range of devices and environments in a consistent way. And consistent is the key word here, really. This means you don't have to worry about other users seeing something different than you see. This also entails that there is version compatibility. The way your PDF is displayed is independent of the version that was used to create a PDF. You can also merge different PDF documents without needing to worry about their version. The next benefit came into life when Adobe released PDF as an open standard, making it non-proprietary. Well, but then PDF was already the de facto standard in many industries. This certainly helped PDF on its path to becoming the most widespread document format and boosted the availability of free viewers and tools. PDF is also defined as an ISO standard. The International Organization for Standardization is an independent body, and we already discussed the working groups that consist of industry experts such as Michael. And what this does, it ensures user confidence, and you have guarantee of quality and consistency. In other words, it sort of offers some guarantee that PDF will be around as we know it for the considerable future. And finally, PDF has some added capabilities it does well, and that's synchronized with archiving use cases. Think of digital signing, sweeping sensitive data, and so on. So why PDF-A then, and not just use general PDF to archive your documents, right? Well, while all these benefits I just mentioned, they can apply to general PDF. PDF-A introduces some more restrictions that guarantee the document's display also remains consistent over a longer period of time. Let's take a look at some of these restrictions. A key aspect of PDF is self-containment, meaning all content and info should be embedded in the file. Fonts, for example, need to be embedded so that the document is still rendered in the same way, even if the font is not available in the environment the PDF is viewed in. Video and audio is not allowed because playing those requires external tools, which goes into that key aspect of self-containment. Executable code is not allowed because it could alter the content of the original PDF. And then finally, also standardized metadata is required in XMP formats. Now, what this does, it offers a consistent way of adding additional information to the document. For example, the author or a description. And that then in turn helps greatly with searchability. Quite important in many archiving use cases. So now that we know why we use PDFA, let's try to get a deeper understanding of what PDFA is exactly. To fully understand PDFA, we'll have a quick overview of its 4 different parts. While at first sight it can be confusing to learn that your OCR scanned document is best output to PDF A3U, it is less complicated than one might think. I'll stick to the key points in this webinar. If you want a detailed overview, we have a brand new iText PDFA ebook available. I think it's a very useful resource if you want to have everything about PDFA centralized for yourself to go through again, or if you want to advocate the use of PDFA within your organization. So the parts, we have an overview here. They were released chronologically from 1 to 4, and they are based on the different general PDF spec version and their capabilities. So PDF 1.4, 1.7, and 2.0. Later PDF parts, however, shouldn't be seen as purely better versions, but rather as an extension of archiving options prior parts offered. In general terms, later parts are less restrictive. So let's zoom in on PDF A1, which was first released. It is the most restrictive, and it is still used a lot for exactly that reason. It includes a basic conformance level B and an accessibility conformance level A, which requires a PDF to be tagged. PDF A2, already less restrictive, introduces some PDF 1.7 capabilities that weren't present in PDF A1, like that transparency layers, JPEG compression, among others. But the most important change is that PDF A2 can embed other PDF A documents functioning as a PDF file container. This is also the preferred format for archived files that require digital signatures, since it supports PATIS compliant signatures, which is the de facto standard for good digital signatures. Digital signing is out of the scope of this webinar, but I'd like to refer you to our webinars on digital signing on our YouTube channel. PDF A3, for me, that's where it gets really interesting. PDF A3 allows you to embed any type of file. While initially this was much discussed since it could bypass the restrictions of PDFA if you use your PDFA document as a sort of an empty shell for those other files. But if you use it responsibly, there are several interesting use cases. First is what we call hybrid archiving. The strict PDFA specs could mean you lose some of your original content when you migrate to PDFA. But thanks to PDF A3, you can now include your original document. Another interesting use case is when we include a machine-readable XML copy of our document. This allows external applications to process the content in a much more performant way. This is applied in the Zugfert specification. It's a format for electronic invoices. It's mostly known in Europe, and it combines visual representation in a PDFA form with an XML file for machine interpretation. And then PDF can also act as a container for multiple files, but this is not necessarily within the scope of archiving alone. We wrote a blog on the uses and how to implement it, and it's called PDF portfolios and how to use them. And then PDF A4, the youngest, certainly in PDF terms. It was only released in November 2020. So it supports PDF 2.0 features, such as including the page level output intent. Output intent tells the processor how to interpret the colors used in the document. It also allows some restrictive use of JavaScript, although the main goal for that is to reserve the process by which a file reached its current state, not so much to have the preservation of working JavaScript guaranteed. That would defeat the whole concept of self-containment. It also drops conformance levels. For conformance level A, B, and U, this doesn't mean you can't create an accessible PDF A4 document. The standard just recommends to follow PDF UA guidelines, which is the PDF standard for accessible documents. It does introduce 2 new profiles that act as an extension to PDF A4. PDF A4F for embedding any other file, making it a successor to PDF A3. And PDF A4E for support of rich media and 3D annotations. Pickup of PDF A4 is rather slow. Most applications and libraries, including iText, don't support PDF A4 yet, but we are closely monitoring the needs of the community for PDF A4. And we would also like to hear from you. And that's why we have a poll. So an interactive poll I'll launch right now. So if all is good, you should see it on your screen now. So the question here is, do you generate PDF-A files? And if so, which is the highest numbered part you use? So A, I never generate PDF-A, or I wasn't aware of the parts, and then you have the different PDF-A parts. So I think you can see that the goal here is to determine whether you use PDF-A and to see if those later parts indeed catch on among our audience. So you can answer now, but know that it's anonymous, but we'll share the results in a few seconds. So I'll give it like 10 more seconds to let everyone answer, and then we'll share the results here. So let's have a look at the results. So as you can see, all of you have used PDF-A, and none of you have used PDF-A4 yet. It was sort of what we expected here. Interesting to know is that we also had another session of this webinar where the results were slightly different, and there was some use of PDF-A4. So it's definitely mixed. So let's move on to the next slide while I hide these results. So this is maybe the more lively part of PDF-A, the use cases and a case study with one of our customers. I'm not going to take you through a long list of theoretical examples. I think we had enough theory for today. Instead, I'll give you a quick overview. Again, details on all of these are discussed in our ebook, so if you want to read up on that, you can certainly do that. We will use our time to zoom in on a few use cases. I'll show you how Zeiss used iText to create PDF-A files from scratch. Then another use case is going from a flat scan to a PDF-A document. Here, Michael will show you how you can use iText PDF OCR to have editable and searchable text in your scanned document. And then, of course, more and more, the main use case is going from digital born documents to PDFA. PDF to PDFA, Microsoft Office to PDFA, email and attachments to PDF-A3, where you have the email as the general PDFA file and then the attachment as various file types. And again, Michael will demo the most interesting use case here, I think, of going from HTML to PDFA. But first up, a case study with Zeiss. So Zeiss is a big healthcare player in the business of medical devices and software, especially in medical growth sectors such as microsurgery and eye scans. And I think you can all see which word I was avoiding to pronounce here. So being in that healthcare sector, Zeiss has to live up to the DICOM standards, which regulates the preservation of medical documents for up to 30 years. And it has a hard requirement for those documents to be PDFA. And this is actually the case in many industries, that hard requirement for PDFA. They have a piece of software that's called Forum, and you can see one of the reports there on the right. And it's a data management system for all the data coming in from those different medical devices. So the goal here was to improve the medical workflow efficiency by integrating data from all the devices into combined reports, aggregating all that data. There were some challenges, however, since some of the devices are compliant, others are not, and we have to generate PDF reports that are PDFA compliant. Luckily, Zeiss used iText 7, and iText 7 lets you just do that. You can gather data from multiple sources, then you can combine them into a PDFA compliant document. And an example of the result you can see here, you have all that data together in one PDFA compliant PDF. The result, a very happy customer. Here you can see a quote from Robert, the lead software developer at Zeiss. But to show you how easy it really is, we'll switch over to Michael now. Michael will demo you how to create new PDFA documents, create PDFA documents from scanned images, and then how you could also do that in, with PDF HTML. Let me just check if Michael can share his screen here. There we go. Thanks, Michael. Yeah, I certainly can.
Okay, great. Thank you for that introduction and for the explanation of PDFA. It's very insightful.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So for the second part, I'm going to show you a few code samples. For those of you who aren't coders or developers, I'll try to keep it as simple as possible so you can follow along. So as Kenneth mentioned, there are three scenarios that I would like to go through. First of all, I'm going to create a simple PDFA document using iText 7. Then I'm going to convert HTML to PDF using PDF HTML. And then I'm going to use PDF OCR to make your PDF files / images scans a bit more smarter. So the first sample that I want to show you is the PDFA sample. Hold on, okay. So in iText, we try to keep everything as simple as possible. We try to provide you tools that allow you to easily create PDF files. So if you use code to generate PDF files using iText, we offer you what we call high-level objects, such as paragraphs, images, lists, tables, stuff that you might know from other document models, such as Word or HTML. So we translate these concepts to PDF syntax. So that's where we come in. So we start out by creating a PDFA document object. And in this case, we want to make a PDFA 1A document. That's for the initial, though, let's make that into a B, just to show you the cool advantages of it. So as kind of briefly touched on, PDF-A requires an output intent to be declared. That is going to be a color profile in this case that tells us, or at least the viewer or the printer or whatever, what kind of color space that is going to be used or how those colors are defined on that machine. In this case, it's just a simple file that can be found here. It's also available in one of our public repositories or online that you can find. Next up, we have the font issues. So as Kenneth already mentioned, fonts need to be embedded if you're working with PDF-A. So what we are going to do is we are going to force the embedding. And then we are going to create a paragraph. We're going to set that font to the paragraph and then add some text to that paragraph. So we're going to add the all-known phrase, the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog, to the document. But we are going to replace the words fox and dog by images. So in this case, I've got two images. To no surprise, it should be a dog, which it is, and a fox. Again, that's also a fox. So we then add that paragraph, which is named P, to the document, and we close the document so that it's ready to be written to the output. If we run the sample now, give it some time to compile and start up Java, you can see that the process has finished with exit code 0, which means that it's run successfully. Right here in the results folder, you can now see the pdfa.pdf file, which is something that we've just generated. So this is Adobe Acrobat. It's a very popular PDF viewer implementation, and it shows you immediately that this document claims to be PDF-A by the blue bar that you can see on top here. The text is there, the images are there as well, so that's great. Another thing to look out for is in the left-hand side, you have a panel right here. It's the standards pane in the left tool panel, and it tells you which PDF-A standard, at least which level of PDF-A it tries to comply to. So in this case, it's PDF-A1B. It also tells you the output intent very nicely. So that was the B sublevel. If you want to switch to the A sublevel, there are different requirements, as Kenneth has touched on earlier. But I just wanted to show you that it's very easy to switch between the two. And secondly, iText will also tell you what is wrong with your document if you don't follow the PDF-A rules and guidelines. So in this case, we are missing something in our catalog dictionary. It's a bit cryptic, but iText takes care of everything for you if you use the following one line of code. If you add the tags to the file, you may remember that Kenneth mentioned this. So if we add the tags to the file, then the sample will run correctly and out will come the same output and no error code this time. So it's again successful run. If you open the file, then you will see it's the same file, same blue bar. But if you now go to standards here, it will say that it's compliant to PDF-A1A. And now the tab on the top of that one is the tags one. Now you can see that the document has been tagged. You can see the quick brown fox is included in the span, and there are figures which are the images. So that has gone smoothly, I'd say. The next sample that I wanted to show is PDF-HTML. So that is HTML to PDF, which is a very common use case that we come across in our customers and prospects. So the thing that we want to do again is to write a PDF-A document. So in this case, just for to change up the diet, I'm going to create a 2B file. I'm also going to provide the output intent that we've declared before with the same file that we've used before. HTML converter at the bottom will take an input stream or an input file that will typically be HTML and then an output which will be PDF. You can also provide it with some properties, which in this case we will do. We will tell PDF-HTML where to find the images that it needs to convert and where to find the fonts that it needs to generate the PDF file. So let me just open up the HTML real quick so you can at least see what we're trying to convert. Open in Explorer. Let me just open that in Firefox real quick. So as you can see, it's a very similar HTML to the document that we've generated before. Let me close that down. So let's just run this sample as well. Okay, again, exit code 0, and the more observant people have seen that the file has popped up here. HTML to PDF.pdf is a new file that we've just generated. And again, the text is there, and the blue banner on top declares that we comply, the PDFA, and the standards tab tells you PDFA to B. So that is all very nice. The final sample that I wanted to show you is PDF OCR. PDF OCR is a tool that we've released recently, which offers OCR functionality. So in a lot of PDF files, a lot of scanned images, and a lot of PDF files that generate from scanners typically don't include textual data, meaning that if you scan a letter or an invoice to your PC, then the text data isn't there anymore. You cannot select text, you cannot copy paste text, let alone search for the total amount that you need to pay, for instance. OCR is the process of trying to find text in images or in non-textual contexts. And what PDF OCR does, it will overlay the image in the PDF file with the textual data that it found. OCR, by the way, stands for optical character recognition. So that's a very fitting name, I'd say. PDF OCR uses the open source Tesseract engine, which you can see here. We've defined a few properties that we need to use, such as where to find the trained data for Tesseract, which we will then pass to the OCR PDF creator instance. And then you will see a very similar setup here. So we do need to use the output intent again, which will tell the PDFA file where to find or what colors to use and how to use them, how to interpret them. And then we will pass that all to the creation process. So that will take a bit more time because OCR is an intensive process. It won't take too long, I promise, but it's a bit slower. There we go, exit code 0. That wasn't too long, right? So as you will see now, PDF OCR.pdf is a new file. And this is a file based on 2 images. Maybe I can jump back to my code editor again. As you can see, it's page1.png, page2.png, and that contains no text because they are PNGs. And if I select everything now, you will see that there is selectable text in there. So that about concludes my demo. Maybe one last thing to say is that all of this is, you can try all of this out on the website, on the demo labs that we have, and there's also a free trial that people can use, right, Kenneth?
Yeah, that's correct. So if you want to try this for yourself, you can trial iText 7. We have a free 30-day trial. And then, of course, since we're open source, you can either apply for a commercial license or open source AGPL if it's applicable to your project. Also, PDF OCR and PDF HTML are both open source add-ons. So I see we have quite a few questions. I'll handle the ones that apply to most of you in the time we have. If you don't get your question, know that we will answer it by email. Let me just pop up our webcams again. Michael, if you could do the same, then we'll make it a bit more lively, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So the first question I got here is, can I apply digital signatures with iText to a PDFA document? Does that then remain a valid PDFA document? Is that one you could answer, Michael?
Yeah, sure. So the first part of that question is, can you apply signatures with iText to a file? Let's ignore the PDFA part for just a moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can do that. iText is a very useful tool to add signatures to a PDF file. So you can append new signatures to an existing file that already has some signatures, and you can just create new signatures to it. PDFA does have does allow for signatures to be put on top of that file as well. As you've mentioned in your slide deck, I think it was PDFA 2 has some provisions, or at least is suited to be, it's best suited to add some signatures. I think you mentioned specifically the PADES specification. which is a European standard which outlines how signatures should look like in best practice. Most of PDF 2.0 has adopted or has included some parts of this standard. So yeah, it is possible.
Okay, good to know. So yeah, again, it boils down to using the correct part as well as we've seen. That's why it was so important to go over that, to have that understanding.
Exactly.
So next question here is from Sohail. How does PDF-A relate to, how does PDF A1A relate to PDF UA? Are they the same?
Oh, okay. I'll take that one if you don't mind.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So how does PDF A1A, I think it was, relate to PDF UA? So PDF A and PDF UA are two separate standards. They do have some overlap in requirements and provisions, but they serve a different purpose. So as you've learned throughout this webinar, and as Kenneth has expertly explained, PDF A is meant for archiving. That's what the A also stands for. We don't try to make it too hard. But you also have PDF UA, which stands for Universal Accessibility, which aims to make content as accessible as possible for those who are visually impaired, for instance. I think there's a webinar and a book upcoming on that as well, right, Kenneth? Yeah,
indeed.
So the difference there is that there's a lot of overlap between the two. So you have PDF UA has a provision of needing tags, so your PDF files need to be tagged. Well, PDF A sublevel A also need them to be tagged, but sublevel B doesn't need to be tagged. So there's a lot of overlap between the two, but there are some distinctions in rule sets and goals. But that doesn't mean that they are mutually exclusive. You can have PDF A files which are UA compliant as well, so that you can have one super file, let's say, that does everything.
Okay. So I have another question, and the question is, can iText create PDF A3 documents as well?
Yeah, that's no issue. So I'll go back to the code real quick if you don't mind. I think I'm still sharing my screen, right?
Yeah.
So let me go back to the easy sample, the PDF-A sample, because that's a bit more clear. So as of today, and this is being recorded, so I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but as of today, we do support PDF A3, both all levels. So we have B, A, and U. So we support all of them. Just for fun, I know it's going to fail, but let me just run it and see what iText tells us what's wrong with this document, because it is written to be a PDF A1 file. Oh, there we go. Luckily, coincidentally, my PDF A1 file also is a valid PDF A3 file. So that's good, because I'm not using any of the exotic features. So that's true. So that's not always a possibility, by the way. Don't count on that.
And actually, I think if you use PDF OCR, you can also output the PDF A3U.
Yeah, you can, using the very similar stuff. So the conformance levels are also applicable to PDF OCR.
All right. I see we have some specific questions left. We are, however, running out of time. So if you don't mind, we'll get back to those by email. If any of the questions you asked, if our answers were incomplete or you would require more information, you can contact us and we will be happy to look at your individual use case and to give you all the information you need. So you can email us through marketing@itextpdf.com. As we mentioned before, if you want to get started with iText, there is a free trial and you can find it on itextpdf.com. Get started. And as we mentioned earlier in this webinar, there is of course the ebook on PDF-A, which contains all the information again for you. So thanks for joining us today, and Michael, thank you for demoing iText and showing how you only need a few lines of code to make it work.
Yeah, you're welcome, and thank you for the explanations that you gave.
All right. So bye everyone, and we hope you can join us again next time.
Bye.
Bye.